Sir, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. So I think we in India sometimes create many myths. And one of the most interesting self-serving myths which we have created for ourselves is the belief that there is something called a bipartisan foreign policy. I think anybody who's seen and witnessed the proceedings of today's debate would have recognized that there is very little bipartisan, but there is a lot of fierce disagreements which mark our approaches to foreign policy. So many years ago, I remember in 1988 in Colombo, a very distinguished High Commissioner of India, Sri J.N. Dikshit, who later had the privilege of serving as National Security Advisor before his unfortunate death, he pointed me a huge map of Asia. And he said, "Do you know what is Indian foreign policy?" And he said, "From Singapore to Aden, from Kashgar to Colombo, that is the natural reach of India." What he didn't add was he wasn't being terribly original. This is a Curzonian, it was Lord Curzon who actually said that. But sir, that is one aspect of an approach to foreign policy which we see that the primacy of the neighborhood is what determines India. That is what gives India its power. That is what gives India always its power. There is another vision of foreign policy, sir, and I don't think that can be categorized along party lines. But we have pursued different foreign policies depending on various prime ministers and different administrations. The other approach to foreign policy, sir, is when we talk loftily, when we propound various noble sentiments, where we forget that we have a neighborhood to protect, we have our self-interest to protect when we think we are the leader of ideas and based on nothing in particular. I think at times we have erred on this side. There was a time, sir, when the Indian currency was there in Aden, when the Gulf, the Indian rupee was the prevailing currency of the Gulf. When we had missions in Kashgar, when we had in Lhasa. Now, in search of a very noble ideal, we gave up the Kashgar mission. We gave up the Lhasa mission. We allowed Indians to be repatriated from Kenya. We allowed Indians to be repatriated from Sri Lanka, from Burma. That too was a part of our foreign policy. The question, therefore, sir, is which one are we to adopt? There have been various people today who have said, we've become a poodle of America. We've become subservient to some other forces. I think it is very important to realize certain things. That again, here, we had two approaches. In 1962, when we were confronted by the Sino-Indian War, we had our Prime Minister, in the face of military defeat, rushing to the United States belatedly and saying, "Help us out." And we had another approach, which was in 1971, when we faced an imminent war, and when we forgot for a moment that non-alignment means whatever it meant, and actually had a very pragmatic and expedient understanding with the then Soviet Union. So it's not a question of which alliance is where. It's a question of what suits us at which point. My friend Sitaram Yechuri has been extremely critical about the particular defense agreement with the United States. Today, sir, if we were in a world in which we faced no threats, where there were no competition, I would have said, well, frankly, this is a bit exaggerated. But what this government has done in the various Mr. Modi's trips to the United States is basically a continuation of what the earlier government had done. And I compliment the earlier government for recognizing that there is a time when you cannot cling on to an old shibboleth, when you cannot cling on to an idea whose time is long gone. And I think the sense of pragmatism, the sense of flexibility, which has marked this government is very, very important. The issue of Israel has again been, I don't think that this government can claim a degree of originality on this count, because it was the relationship with Israel was, to begin with, negotiated around the time of Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. Then it was taken to another level by Mr. Narasimha Rao, incidentally, perhaps one of the most pragmatic prime ministers we've had, at least in the realms of foreign policy. And, sir, the larger question is, do we keep a relationship under parda? Do we claim that, do we always insist that, yes, Israel is very important. Israel can supply us ammunition during the Bofors War. Israel can be our biggest friend, but we can say, oh, no, we don't know you. Your prime minister can't come to our country. Our prime minister can't go to your country. Sir, it is against this hypocrisy. And I think that is why, to celebrate the 25 years of diplomatic relations with Israel, I think the Prime Minister did a very good thing, because it is not merely, Israel. Israel is a window to a larger opportunity which I need not elaborate, but which everybody knows about. And it was done for the sake of our national interest, which is paramount and which everybody in the House agrees. I think, sir, sometimes we miss the wood for the trees. We sometimes think that old ideas must always be there. Now, this government has, to a large extent, redefined foreign policy, but not redefined it in terms of what happened 10 years ago. There has been a large element of continuity, but where there has been a redefinition has been in terms of taking out these abstract slogans, these abstractions. Ruthless pursuit of national self-interest has really been what is most important. Sir, I would say that the real reorientation of our foreign policy has happened in different ways. Firstly, the emphasis has been, as various people in this debate today has pointed out, is to develop capacity. If you don't have capacity and you preach to the world, you will be left with what in the past we used to call a ship-to-mouth existence. During the time of the PL 480, when we used to denounce the United States and go begging for their wheat. At least we have recognized that we must, if necessary, if we can get Apple Corporation to manufacture in India, it's not merely that we are opening our market, but we are sending a signal that we are in the forefront, we are at the cutting edge of technology. That is very important. That foreign policy must be used also to develop capacity. But, sir, we have a legacy problem. A legacy problem which I think manifested itself in Colombo Port, manifested itself in our dealings with Iran, etc., is the slow pace of decision-making in India. We have never been quick to take the appropriate decisions for various reasons. These may be historical reasons, these may be our inherited systems of cumbersome bureaucracy, etc. With the result that often, including in Africa, we have often been beaten to the post by a big neighboring country which seems to want to emulate 19th century imperialism. And that is a systemic change which we have to inculcate, the quickness of decision-making. So finally, there is another point. Everybody has spoken about the relative importance of the diaspora. I think it's very important to stress this more and more. The biggest ambassadors of India have often been overseas Indians. And till you can give them that pride, till you can make them stand tall, till you can give them a certain stake in our country, you won't be able to. Then you'll be confronted by dismal editorials in certain papers which says, you know, India is going to the dogs. It is those people who are really today at the heart of this new approach. And I compliment the External Affairs Minister for the human touch which she has brought in. She has not only made every Indian who travels, every Indian with an Indian passport, feel a part of our foreign policy. Normally foreign policies seem to be something very elitist and not really concerned with masses. But she's at least given that touch. More important, the Prime Minister has given a certain pride. The Prime Minister has given a certain flexibility. He has given a certain outreach, despite the mocking. It is not for us, sir, to actually say whether Donald Trump is a good choice for the Americans or not. There are different views on it. The point is, he is their choice. So what do we say? We say, do we quote a passage from the New York Times, as Mr. Yechuri has done, or do we deal with him in our interest? We are not voters in their country. Do we read the British a certain thing in some paper and say you made a terribly wrong choice on Brexit? Or do we recognize they have chosen and deal with it? When you put India first, you have one approach. But then, sir, it is ironic that people who oppose the Pokhran blast today berate us for not entering the NSG. The people whose sympathies were not with India in 1962 also berate us for that. And it is that contradiction, it is that hypocrisy I think we should today put an end to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.